Good morning, Jacqueline. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Thanks for doing this with us.
No problem.
So the first thing you might know, we're doing, I'm calling it 25 grads. So it's a graduate of our high school and our system, one graduate from every year.
Yep.
And we found you, yay,
Yeah.
and a graduate of 1995 at
Yes.
Souhegan High School.
Seems a long time ago.
Yeah, so can you tell, for the audience that's going to see this, where we are physically and why we chose to be here, why I chose to be here probably.
We're in my parents' living room, which is directly across from the Brick School, where your office is, which is actually where I went to kindergarten. And so my parents have met you over the years when they've been outside in the yard and invited you into their home, and that's how you found out that I was a graduate. And I also came up because the district that I'm working in, I'm the K-12 math coordinator, and we're rolling out Math in Focus, which is the same program that you're using. So I was able to spend the day at Wilkins and learn about how you went about rolling out that program.
Terrific.
Yeah.
So walk us through your education in Amherst a little bit.
Born and raised here, so I went to kindergarten at the Brick School, and I can remember my teacher, Mrs. Ulisany, very well. And then I went through Clark for first grade, and then Wilkins, and went to the middle school. And then actually my freshman year in high school, I went to MASH over in Milford. And that's when they began the process of developing the plan for Souhegan. And we were not excited about it because you made all these new friends in Milford. And then the change happened my sophomore year, and I attended Souhegan sophomore through senior year.
So 3 years at the high school.
3 years at the high school, yep.
So let's talk a little bit about Wilkins, Clark and Wilkins. People you remember, other people you remember?
I remember Mrs. Hardcastle, my first grade teacher. Very firm, but a great teacher. And at Wilkins, I most remember Mr. St. Amand, who's now the principal. He was my third grade teacher. I remember he had his daughter when I was in his class. And I remember Mr. April very well in gym class. I just met his grandson today. And we were talking about how he used to play tricks on us and pretend he had a twin brother. I really remember, I think his name was Mr. Gordon, and he did the newspaper. And I remember working on the newspaper at Wilkins, and Mrs. Emmond I remember as well very well. So,
terrific.
Yeah, it was great.
I hope they all see this and can have fond memories of that. Let's go to the middle high school experience. Talk to us a little bit about that.
For middle school, I would say those are the years that were a blur for me. I remember probably maybe that's where my love of math started. I remember my math class with Mr. Johnson, and I can't remember if that was 7th or 8th grade, and really enjoying that class. And I remember Mrs. Smith, who was there for years, and she would do a cartwheel down the hall at the end of the year. And she was I'm the youngest of 10 kids. I have 9 siblings. And she was the one teacher I think almost everyone had, and I was dying to have as an English teacher. But middle school is really where I remember starting to fall in love with math, and that became my career, math and science. And then we transitioned to high school. So the middle school, like I said, I remember switching teachers. I remember Mr. Dubril in French class, and that's when I first got to take French, which is my father's. He's fluent in French, so that was exciting to be able to communicate with him and learn that.
So often we hear about other high schools in our area, and there's a competition.
Yep.
Hollis, Brookline, Bedford, Souhegan. And I often say to people, Souhegan graduates have this, whatever you want to call it, aura about them. They're able to look at you, they can speak well, they talk a lot about their high school experience, and it comes off as really true, and they really enjoyed it, and they remember it. So let me go through a few things at the high school that you may remember. I understand you're on community council.
Yes.
So that's the governing body of Souhegan. How many years, what did you remember about that?
I think I was on it for all 3 years. I don't quite remember. And I was a representative on it. And I remember it was a neat opportunity because it was a brand new school that we helped establish some of the school rules and policies. So that was really exciting. I remember when I was running for a candidacy on community council that we'd have a big debate at the high school on the stage. And it was a neat opportunity to sit in a room with the teachers and the students and feel like you were on the same playing field in establishing rules and talking about how the school should function and what should happen if you don't follow a policy. And that was a neat opportunity and a great leadership opportunity for a kid that I think is very different than a lot of student councils in high schools. Working at a high school for a long time, it doesn't function that way. They're not part of a governing policy, which I felt like I was at Souhegan.
So Jacqueline, we haven't talked about your family.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I met my husband at Souhegan in Mrs. Shermer, now Mrs. Chapman's environmental science class. And we are now married. We didn't.
And his name is?
His name is Steve Petrella, and his brother went to the high school as well. And we didn't date all of those years. We reconnected later, and he's actually now a teacher as well. He's a 6th grade math science teacher in the same district that I work in.
Wonderful.
And then we have 2 kids who are 6 and almost 8. And they're a bundle of energy and a bundle of joy.
So he'll be benefiting from Math in Focus as well?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep. So there's probably more math talk than I want at home, but we talk a lot about the program. And so it's kind of neat to have that ability to do that at home. And we can commiserate about our high school experience as well. And kind of that takes a role in both of our teaching as well. Yeah.
Okay. Do you still stay in touch with a lot of kids you graduated with?
I do. I have a handful of friends that I keep in touch with, and then we have his friends that he keeps in touch with. And his brother also married a graduate. And so there's 4 of us from Souhegan. And so we all have our different friend groups that we keep in touch with, along with my brother's friends. So there are a lot of people that I actually am in communication with.
So what do they talk about when they talk about Souhegan? And that's to my point about how did we do with you?
Yes. Yep.
As a student, and how did we do with many others? What do they, when they look back, how do they feel about their education? And what does it help them to be in their lifetime?
There's a lot of stories. I think we had, especially in the beginning years, a lot more freedom. It was a very open campus, and we talk about our ability to kind of self-monitor ourselves and the freedoms that went along because it was an open campus. And that comes up a lot because I think that's unique to a high school.
I do too.
I'm not sure if it's still that way today.
Somewhat.
The senior project certainly comes up a lot because it was such a unique experience to be able to select something and work on one project in depth that was of particular interest to you. It wasn't, research a historian or, write a paper on a book that you read. You got to pick something and really dive deep into it. And I always like the component of the active research with it, that you got to be a part of something and kind of control a little bit of your education, which was really neat. We all talk about how when we went to college, we could write a paper like nobody else. We could do a project like nobody else could, and I think that gave us an advantage. And also communicating with adults, I think it created an environment at the high school, which if you ask my parents, they did not like that you could call teachers by their first names.
I think your dad has mentioned that to me a couple of times.
I'm sure he has. But I think the dynamics of the building, you establish stronger relationships with teachers than you probably would have at other high schools. And on a alternate side, I would say we talk a lot about how we weren't as well prepared for some of the standardized testing and more traditional tests because it was a school so focused on projects and presentations and kind of looking at the big picture with the essential questions that when I got to college, I remember sitting in a biology class and taking my first 100-question multiple choice test. And I knew the big picture and I knew all the big concepts, but the art of memorizing the details was something that escaped me. And I was a good student in high school. So that was a learning curve leaving the school, I think, and entering a more traditional setting because Souhegan was so untraditional.
And your friends felt that way as well.
Yes.
You talk about that a lot.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Could I ask you a little bit about your senior project? Like what
Sure.
was your senior project?
Mine is teaching science, something that I want to pursue in life. So originally I thought I was going to be a science teacher. So it was a neat opportunity. Mr. Schlattman was my mentor.
Sure.
And I actually did a mini student teaching with Chris Balch. So I went into a freshman class and I got to plan some lessons and carry them out. And I got to attend some professional development workshops, and I read a lot of Ted Sizer's books at the time because that was the foundation of the coalition. And I got to grade papers and really be a part of the teaching community, which was a neat opportunity, and make a decision if it's something that I wanted to pursue in my life. Yeah.
So you're in Simsbury, Connecticut right now.
Yes.
We're at the high school for quite a while.
Yep.
Now in SAU, kind of here, it's a district
Yes.
job that
Yep.
you have. So take a look at Simsbury High School. Is it called Simsbury High School?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good. And Souhegan High School. How do you compare them, or is it easy to compare them, or can you, from your experiences?
I can, and it's interesting because I didn't realize how well Souhegan was known kind of to the greater community, and we were talking about exploring the idea of a senior project or a capstone project. And I said, well, where I went to high school, and they said, where did you go? I said, Souhegan. They're like, oh, you went there? And I didn't realize that it was a place that was known to so many people. And I think in terms of a high school experience, the senior project differentiates it from a lot of schools. Simsbury, where I teach, is probably more traditional on its tracking and its path. It's not homogeneously grouped, it's heterogeneously grouped, and in some disciplines. And it's a much more structured setting than what I experienced in high school. Again, I'm not sure how much has changed since then. So it's more formal. Obviously, the teachers are called by their first names, and I think I'm trying to. It's hard to compare in some respects. It's a lot more like what I remembered being at MASH than my experience at Souhegan.
So good. It is hard to compare.
Yeah.
College, high school to college. Where did you go, and how many times did you change your major?
A couple. I went to Providence College, and I went in as a science major, biology major, because I always thought I wanted to teach science. And I got in there and I realized it wasn't my passion. And I was in with a lot of students who were pre-med, which wasn't an area of interest for me. And so I came home. I remember coming home thinking I was going to let people down because I got all these science awards, and I said no. I said I want to explore other things, and I only changed my major once, but I explored a lot of other areas. I looked at social work and psychology, and I, along the way, continued to take math classes because I always liked it and I was always really good at it. And I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. And so in the end, I ended up with the math education. And I will say with Souhegan graduates, there's a lot of teachers that come out of that school. And I think it's because of the experience that we had with our teachers. That's the one thing that makes Souhegan very unique. And so I ended up finishing with a math secondary ed degree.
Terrific. So it's a beautiful December day.
Yes.
And great to have you here. And you're also here for another reason. I know we talked a little bit about it before, but we talk a little bit more about that. How we relate, and we're hoping you'll partner with us from now on.
Yes, I would love to. So I, for the past 10 years, have been the math department supervisor at the high school, and recently accepted a position as our K-12 math supervisor. And they just adopted K-8, the Math and Focus program. And so they were looking for someone with more of a math mind to help unroll the program. And I also have a curriculum background. My master's is in curriculum and instruction, and then I have my administrative degree as well. So it was a neat opportunity to kind of put all of that together and help do something new. And it's a big learning curve for me in that I'm learning about the elementary school. And I've done a lot of work with middle school, but I haven't done much with elementary school. So this is providing me an opportunity to get into another elementary school and see how you went about unrolling the program, even though it's been 6 years, 7 years?
6, I think.
And Jen, I met with Jen Eccleston this morning, and she's done a great job just sharing all of the different criteria you had and the expectations for teachers and grading policies, because those are all things that we're struggling with right now, along with teaching the content and providing professional development. So kind of hoping to pull bits and pieces that I can bring back and use as we unroll the program in Simsbury.
Great. It's nice to have you here today,
Yeah,
too.
I appreciate it so much.
So last question.
Yeah.
Your education through in Amherst, what kind of effect did it have on your life as a teacher? You just mentioned a few things about how we have so many Souhegan kids that are not teachers. And it looks like you have a great experience continuing with friends of yours talking about Souhegan. But is there anything that you'd like to add to that? Anything that I could that you could put on top of that it's helped you to be who you are today?
I mean, it shaped who I am today, because I was here, you know, K-12, and I'm not sure, I think a lot of kids had that experience, but of my siblings, I'm the only one who went through the district. Actually, my brother did, K-12, and I had so many teachers who were wonderful. You asked me to name some of the people that I remember, sure. And they had such an impact on me in different ways, and shaped who I am as a teacher. I can remember talking to Miss Knapp and Mr. Pato in high school, and I don't think either of them are still there. Nope. And I was struggling with, because some of the group work, because there was constant group work at Souhegan, and I said, you know, how do we make it effective, and so that I'm doing something and everybody else in the group is doing something? And the fact that you could have that conversation with a teacher is so powerful. And I think it shaped the way that I teach in my classroom. I think I had a much more Souhegan-like approach in my classroom than some of the teachers that I worked with. And I made lasting friendships, you know, that 40 years later, I'm still talking to the same people that I was in second grade with. And so I'm grateful for the experience that I had. And even though I think I was at Souhegan where there was a lot of growing pains, I think I came out, you know, okay in the end, and I was able to use my education to further my career in the end. And this is not the first time I've come back to visit the school. I was able to come back with colleagues and go to the high school and research more about the senior project. So it really has continued to be a part of my professional life, which I think is unique for a lot of people.
Wonderful. That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
So we should, before we end, we should give a little shout out to your parents.
Yes.
So you're one of 10 children.
Yep.
Your dad and mom are very proud of that.
Yes.
And your dad, that's, I think the first time I met him, he talked about that.
Yeah.
So in a beautiful house, and when they see this, they probably may not know that we're sitting in their living room. We probably going to do the kitchen, but I hope I didn't embarrass them too much.
No, they're room, okay. So. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Continue to partner with us. And
yes,
it was so good to talk to you this morning.
It was great to talk to you too. Thank you.
Jacqueline, very much.